Welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, October 21st, 2024, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 538 2024 election forecast and what it predicts for the 2024 presidential election as of today. We are roughly 16 days out from the 2024 presidential election, likely 16, 17, 18 days from knowing who the next president of the United States will be, and 538 has been updating their forecast ever since they released it in August of 2024, mapping a difference in candidate structure, difference in how people have been performing Biden versus Trump, then Harris versus Trump. They've been doing this forecast a bit earlier than August, might I add. This is the recent forecast with Kamala Harris on the ticket. Unfortunately, though, this is a bit of a side note. I don't know if they'll be releasing a Senate forecast right before the election. Maybe they'll do one maybe just a week out, but we are getting very, very close, and this is actually quite rare for 538 to be taking this long, but they did cite the change at the top of the ticket, completely reworked their model that they had been spending 3.5 years on, so I completely, do understand on that point. But when it comes down to the House and Senate races, I'd be interested to see their Senate map. But getting to this point about the 2024 presidential election, getting to where we are when it comes down to Trump, Harris on the battleground map, the numbers here today are some of the best that Donald Trump has seen in a very long time on 538's forecast. 53% chance of victory gives Donald Trump the clear favorite in terms of who is expected to win the election based on their forecast alone. Kamala Harris at 47%. And so what I wanted to do here was really just unpack on a state-by-state basis, where is Trump doing well, where is Harris doing well, and we can really understand where Donald Trump has gained in support relative to a month ago or 2 months ago, where Kamala Harris has lost some support across some of these other battleground states. And so to keep things consistent here, we're going to be using the same type of electoral map that we traditionally use. I'm not just going to show you the 538 map. We're going to actually map it here to give you an understanding of what the margins mean based on the chance of victory. We're going to just use the actual margins that they project each state to go by. But overall here, some pretty good numbers for the former president. And so in understanding it's 53 to 47, we have to remember, too, that this race is still very much a toss-up. I've been saying this when it was Harris at 53 to 47 or Harris even at 60 to 40, that this race was undeniably close. There was not one point in time where I would say definitively that Kamala Harris was guaranteed the election victory. It's very different than the 2020 election, where we said very early on and throughout the consistent remainder of the election that Joe Biden was going to win the race, that Joe Biden had really a significant chance of winning, and that chance of winning rivaled upwards of 90 to 95% nationwide. And that mattered, right? That was something that made a difference in our understanding about the election. The expectation here was that Biden would win, but it was a question of how much Biden would win by, not necessarily does Biden have the ability to win in the election. And that's why we were able to make informed decisions surrounding Senate races, House races, and of course on the presidential level. This time, it really is a toss-up. And it feels very different than any election like 2016 or 2020, and a lot more similar to elections like 2012, 2004, and 2000, which were arguably close and competitive races. And those are races, too, where 2012 is a good example. How even though Obama had a strong electoral college victory, the vibes in the final stretch of the campaign season were very strong for Mitt Romney and showed some pretty promising results for the GOP. We never really saw that for Trump in 2020. We did see it a bit in 2016, but beyond that, too, we are really in a very different scenario in this election. This is the first election with Donald Trump where on 538's forecast as well, he is the favorite to win the race. And so I want us to unpack on an individual state basis, why is this lead now in the advantage for Donald Trump, right? He never had this advantage in the 538 forecast, except for back on August 7th, the day after that Kamala Harris chose Tim Walz as VP. And since then, it's been seemingly smooth sailing for Kamala Harris, reaching a high point of 64% at one point on September 18th. And then from then, the numbers started to decrease. And now today, Donald Trump holds the advantage. And we saw that she did receive a convention bump. We saw that she received a debate bump. People were happy with her performance then. They were happy with her as a candidate, but it seems to have phased off. So now voters moving back in the Donald Trump column. Swing voters that might have been all in on Harris Walz are now all in on Trump Vance. And that's a problem for the Kamala Harris ticket. Now, it isn't something to say that it's not reversible, right? 53 to 47 is just as strong for Donald Trump as it was for Harris when she was up 54 to 45. These are the ways that we, come to know these elections to be close and really just do go and swing back and forth. But based on the trajectory, based on what we've seen on this 538 forecast, the numbers have started to get better for the former president. And again, unpacking that is a really big, important part of this all. And so what they do is a bit of a different thing here when it comes down to how they do characterizations. They do solid Dem, likely Dem, lean Dem, toss-up, lean Republican, all these things. But they do it based on predicted chance. To make things consistent, I know I've done things a bit differently when I've analyzed 538, but in all of my election prediction videos, I do things based on margin. If Kamala Harris is going to win New York by 2 points, that's a lean state. If she's going to win it by 10 points, that's a likely state. If she's going to win it by 25 points, that's a safe state. She wins it by 0.5. It's a tilt state. So really, we use all these characterizations to understand the margins to predict how the race is going to go down to the percentage point rather than down to the chance of victory. And that honestly has been a much better way of informing our own predictions and really just understanding the electoral map in general. And so in going through all of these states, what you will find is that the margins here for Kamala Harris are pretty substantive. I mean, you're seeing states like Washington, where Kamala Harris is expected to win Washington by, 19 points, going to win in Oregon. Now, that is a race that, based on the 530 forecast, we can characterize as what would be a likely state here, but I just want us to go through, right? We're going to see that all of these states, generally speaking, are pretty substantial in favor of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, which is why, respectively, they are considered to be these safe states. And so let's go ahead and just move down this map as we get through. So D.C. is safe blue, Nebraska's third, safe red, Wyoming, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Idaho, North Dakota, safe red, Vermont, Maryland, Massachusetts. I'm really getting down to this point where the 15 is the cutoff of safe states, and the rest are considered to be likely. So let's go ahead and just take 538, transport it to this map here, and see and make sure that we're not doing anything wrong. So New York, Delaware, these are all states that are going to be considered to be safe. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, District of Columbia. I don't know if New Jersey is there just yet. I think New Jersey is expected to be a little bit closer. Again, I see a little bit of benefit in characterizing that, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep it by the books here. What we know, New Jersey would be likely, Illinois would be likely, Oregon would be likely, Hawaii safe, California safe, Washington safe. Let's check Maine's first district here. Nebraska's first is Republican plus 17. Maine's first is also pretty safe. So just making sure that we're getting everything right. I really don't want to incorrectly characterize any of these states. I think it would do a disservice to how close or not close they are expected to be. Let's see here. Missouri, not safe. Mississippi, let's see if we can find it. Mississippi should be pretty safe for Donald Trump. Again, trying to do this right because I want to make sure that we're getting these things correct. So Missouri would be likely. South Carolina would be likely. Indiana, though, I think is going to be pretty safe, 17. I don't think I'm missing any other states in terms of safe states for Donald Trump. He wins Utah. He wins Montana. Iowa's obviously not going to be safe, so that's at 17.8%. Alaska, let's see where Alaska is. I think it actually might be a little bit narrower. So after we get past these states, Kansas, Oklahoma, just making sure, really trying to double check everything here so I'm not giving you the wrong numbers. Oklahoma is way back down here as a very strong conservative state. That's pretty much it for the safe states. And now let's move over into the likely states. Let's move over into the states that are going to be decided by anywhere between 5 to 15 points. Now, these are states that we generally know they're going to go this way, and it doesn't really matter between now and the election. Not much is going to change to a point where any of these states can really flip in favor to the other side of the aisle. And so as we go through them, understand that these margins here, while they may not be the most impressive, the chances of victory for the opposition party are less to none. Given that we are so close to the election, the time to change these races would have been June, July, August. Obviously now with Kamala Harris as the nominee, that came July 21st. So roughly 115 days until between then and the election. It was a lot to change, and it wasn't a lot of time to really shift the margins in some of these other states that are considered to be safe and solid for both sides of the aisle. So Colorado is a likely Democratic state, a bit of a reduction in support there from 2020. Iowa is a safe likely Republican state. Ohio as well. They're really capturing in the true essence of these states and how lopsided they are. Virginia, expected to be a bit closer. Maine at large, expected to be a bit closer. So again, sorry about that. Completely switched the edge screen. Did not mean to do that. Maine 2nd District is safe for the Republicans. Not safe. I do not know why I keep using those terms. Apologies for that one. Likely for the Republican Party. New Mexico is considered to be likely blue. New Hampshire, likely blue. Nebraska 2nd District, likely blue. And Texas is likely red. So continuing on, Texas, likely red here. New Mexico, likely blue. New Hampshire, likely blue. Virginia's already characterized. Let's go ahead and see. Alaska is also a likely red state. Donald Trump expected to win there by roughly 10 points. Nebraska's 2nd, also there. And I think Minnesota is also a likely blue state. And so extended beyond that, we are down to really Florida, also likely red, a 6-point margin expected for Donald Trump. We are down to the 93 tossable electoral votes that we know and love to be these battleground states, the same ones that are always this competitive. And Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania typically do vote together. They voted together for the past 28 years. It used to be the blue wall, turned into the red wall in 2016, back to the blue wall in 2020, really up for grabs here. And this Sun Belt region across the country, North Carolina and Nevada have historically been swing states, but Georgia and Arizona not so much. And so as of recently, they've become more competitive. In 2016, Georgia went to Trump by 5.1 rather. Arizona went to Trump by 3.5. North Carolina went to Trump by 3.7. Nevada went to Clinton by 2.4. They're all competitive at this point. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have roughly similar odds at winning in Nevada. Very close odds in North Carolina, and one candidate has a bit of the upper hand in Georgia and Arizona, but ultimately still, the electoral map here is ever evolving, but still remains to be pretty consistent in some of these battleground states. And what we've known to be battleground states from the beginning of the cycle through the end of it, not really much has changed, right? Virginia hasn't popped up to being this super competitive state like we otherwise might have thought it would have been in 2016 or even in 2020. For instance, same thing on the Republican side. In Iowa hasn't popped up to being this competitive state like we saw in this cycle at least, in comparison to 2020 and 2016 when it was largely seen as this battleground state. Not so much this time. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, 93 electoral votes that divide them, and that will determine the future of the presidency of the United States. And so we'll start off in Georgia and Arizona. These are two states that in particular you can see Donald Trump has really maintained this upper hand. While Kamala Harris had a very small advantage on September 18th, throughout the remainder of the election, Donald Trump has been able to hold this advantage in this state that Joe Biden only won by 0.2%. And so Kamala Harris having a 37% chance of victory and the popular vote here, expected to be a 2-point margin, means Georgia is actually a bit larger than a tilt state. Some states that I would use as tilt would include a state like Georgia, maybe not so much now, but I do think it's absolutely worth it to look at it and say the competitive nature of the state makes it more competitive, makes it more close when it comes down to margin. But we're not exactly seeing that every single time. Arizona shows that Donald Trump holds a 62% chance, so a slight reduction from Georgia, but absolutely still an advantage here. The win probabilities again similarly changed. September 18th was that peak for Kamala Harris, and for a while she actually maintained a lead in August when the numbers were looking a lot better, and her standpoint was that she was going to beat Donald Trump in this state. Now today, Donald Trump holds the upper hand, 62 to 38. When it comes down to popular vote, you can see that the margin here is roughly similar to that of Georgia, in a 2-point margin. And so that brings Donald Trump already to 246. Kamala Harris to 226, with 66 remaining toss-up electoral votes to divide them. And the next state I want to look at is the state of North Carolina to really round out these Sunbelt states, because it's really interesting to see how they shift and change together, and in some cases vote together, just as they seemingly are doing right now. North Carolina gives Donald Trump a 1-point victory in the state. That's enough to characterize it as a lean Republican state, boosting him to 262 electoral votes, meaning if he wins any of the remaining states of the Rust Belt, he wins the election, which is a really good point to be in if you are the former president, because you did it in 2016, right? You won all 3 of these states. Now you need to just win one. Doesn't matter if you win Nevada, doesn't matter if you lose Michigan and Pennsylvania, you win Wisconsin, you win the election. And so North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona are playing a big part in boosting up Donald Trump's chances and possibilities of victory. And that's a big deal for the former president. Really puts him in a really strong position. So 262, let's go ahead and move over to Nevada to, again, round out these Sunbelt states, because, again, they provide a lot of meaningful commentary and a lot of interesting results. So in the Nevada race here, Kamala Harris holds a narrow advantage, a win probability that has absolutely reduced itself over quite some time. Remember, September 18th is that day that will likely go down in infamy should Kamala Harris lose the election, as the day that things were the best for the campaign. Right after that first presidential debate, things were soaring high. The national numbers were really shifting in favor of Kamala Harris, and it was clear that that debate made an imprint on voters across the country and really shifted them to view her much more favorably than they otherwise did, and view Donald Trump much more negatively, which is a large reason why Donald Trump decided, I'm not doing any more debates. I'm not going to debate her anymore. It's clear that the result of that was that voters wanted to see another debate, but it helped Kamala Harris until Donald Trump backed out of it entirely, and it clearly isn't impacting him negatively. So 51 to 49, Nevada here, based on the overall popular vote here, would be a 0.2% margin victory. So Kamala Harris boosts up to 232, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at 262. So let's move on to the Rust Belt states. Let's first talk about the state of Wisconsin, who was the best state for Donald Trump back in 2020 of the Rust Belt states, and the best state for him in 2016 of the Rust Belt states. And let's take a look. As of right now, the popular vote is tied. The win probability is tied. The expectation here is that it is 50 to 50. When you're looking at what they actually see in the full forecast, it truly is very much close and competitive. The polls here say it's close, the fundamentals here say it's close, and the adjusted and regular polling averages say it's close. As of right now, it's a toss-up. It puts us in a scenario where no candidate truly does have the upper hand. Kamala Harris holds this very, very slight tilt and advantage, 502 to 498, but for all purposes, it really just is a tie. Wisconsin is a toss-up state. We'll get back to that, but I wanted us to spend a bit of time talking about it because it really goes to show just how close this race is. And when you take a look at a state like Michigan, for instance, this is a state where Donald Trump has actually started to see, again, moving back into the advantage point in the state. Kamala Harris holds that very, very narrow advantage, but it's not enough at all to be significant whatsoever. Donald Trump at 50 to 50, Kamala Harris's win probability has completely tanked compared to where it was before. On September 18th, remember that was when Kamala Harris held a 66% chance in the state. Today it's 50-50, and the overall forecast here says, I guess Democrats hold a very narrow advantage, Democrat plus 0.1. I guess that's enough to say it's a tilt blue state, but even then, it's a really big stretch. And the final state to look at here is the state of Pennsylvania, a state that Donald Trump holds an advantage in now for the first time in a very long time. The win probability had been going back and forth. High point for Kamala Harris, remember that day, September 18th, 61% chance for her. Now today, Donald Trump is at a 54% chance, probably the highest he has been in quite some time. Yeah, dating all the way back to July 28th, a week after she was entered into the presidential race. So in terms of what was happening on this end, perfect timing here really gives Donald Trump that upper hand in the state of Pennsylvania, and what that gives him is a slight victory in the state, making him the president-elect on November 6th, 2024, assuming the 538 map is correct. And while Kamala Harris might have the upper hand when it comes down to Michigan, it's very narrow. It is less than 0.1%. Whereas in Pennsylvania, it's more favored for the former president at 0.6%. And Wisconsin is a total and complete toss-up. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the color here so it's a bit more obvious that it is a true tie, a true toss-up. But it's 10 electoral votes that really are insignificant if Donald Trump is winning the states that he is winning so far in the 538 forecast. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. And with Nevada and Michigan being decided by 0.1 and 0.2% in these states alone, we are one shift away from Donald Trump winning 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226, which would be the largest Republican victory for any Republican in the 21st century, and a massive overperformance of what the expectations were a month or 2 months ago for the former president, even if this race has always been competitive. Because the 538 forecast shows us that based on the data we are getting in, Donald Trump is doing far better than he was a month ago or 2 months ago. And right ahead of the election, that's the perfect time to be in this position. Feels very similar to 2016, but that doesn't mean that Kamala Harris can't win. Because similarly to just a few points off or even a point off gives Kamala Harris a decisive victory nationwide, not as much as 312, but being in a position where she could win the 3 Rust Belt states in Nevada is enough to secure her the electoral votes necessary to win the election and thus be the 47th president of the United States. TLDR, the race is close. Donald Trump today on 538 has the upper hand. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.